Arlene Mogga Cahirley, and again I want to thank Sinn Féin for bringing this motion and for shining the spotlight on this. And I think the opening sentence of the motion probably noting that as of the 13th of February 24 there are 327 children listed as waiting for scoliosis related surgery within the CHI as compared with 312 in February 17, despite promises, despite everything. And I'm not going to use my time to repeat everything that's set out. It's set out clearly. I'm not sure how you couldn't agree with setting up an independent task force. I mean, that we have to have families, and you're very welcome, but they shouldn't be here in the chamber. They shouldn't have to go through this pain on top of the pain that the families have been through. And I know you know that, Minister, but the point is we're here in relation to that. And we're here after 3 reviews. So the one that's ongoing at the moment, and we have no idea how long it's going to go on. I tabled all questions. I don't know if there's any interim reports. We don't know the timeline for the completion, but that ongoing report with another 17 further cases identified comes on top of 3 previous reports. So earlier on, one of the TDs said there's an absence of governance and institutional issues, and I certainly agree with that. And there are serious issues in relation to CHI itself as to how things weren't picked up along the way. So the ongoing review now comes on top of the internal report, Children's Health Ireland Spine's clinical review report, May 23. The external report, Children's Health Ireland at Temple Street Spinal Surgery Programme for patients with spina bifida, the 7th of July 23. An internal report, Spinal Surgery Clinical Outcomes Review, CHI at Crumlin, September 23. Can you imagine all of these reports and a 4th report, and the families watching their children deteriorating in front of their eyes? It's beyond endurance how the CHI couldn't have had a proactive approach in relation to this, telling us what was necessary. I can't fathom how we've come to the point where I'm standing up supporting an independent review, clearly because the system has utterly failed over and over, and that they would think that internal reviews beggars so many questions in relation to the situation. And this has happened over and over again, as you know. Portiuncula, Portlaoise in relation to deaths of infants and mother and infant deaths and so on. And then if I look at Galway and go parochial just for a moment, just about a year ago, HIQA visited Galway, and in their wisdom they told us it was grossly overcrowded in the accident and emergency. This is the new accident and emergency now, mind you, the temporary one that cost 16 million, because the new one is gone into the cloud cuckoo land. And on the day that HIQA visited an unannounced inspection, they were praiseworthy of the staff, they were praiseworthy of the progress made, but an damning indictment of the situation that remains still on the ground. And do you know what they said? It was grossly overcrowded with 28 patients on trolleys. Do you know many are on trolleys now as we speak? 54 today. It was grossly overcrowded with 28. A year later, and take any week in the last few weeks, we've gone 54, 61, 58, 55. If it was grossly overcrowded with 28, he could have no language left to tell us. On top of that, the situation where children and paediatrics were to have a different route into the hospital, that's gone by the board. We hear an awful lot about Limerick, and rightly so, the hospital Limerick, and indeed Cork. The regional, despite the work of the staff, remains the 3rd worst hospital in terms of waiting lists, in terms of an inadequate accident and an emergency, in the failure to adopt the options appraisal, which was to build a brand new hospital up in Merlin Park, which never happened. So we'll continue on with a piecemeal. And just to conclude, in the context of tonight's discussion, the figures, the waiting list for orthopaedics are absolutely damning. They're just damning in Galway. I've just mislaid the actual figures of them. They're absolutely damning. There were 400 and something in relation to orthopaedics, and in relation to urology, a couple of hundred. And going back over the years, orthopaedics generally has been the worst for waiting lists. I, in the past, have read out a letter where the consultants said they couldn't stand over the pain being suffered by patients. Now, that's Galway, separate from this very specific issue. But the whole lot taken together, it's just an indictment of what we've allowed happen in a republic.